Yeah, no. Welcome to the Weege Show. I know you hate it as soon as you see this office behind me because you know you're not getting the at the track walk and talk. Now, the good news is I'll be at every race in person for the rest of the year from now through Pro Motocross and SMX playoffs. Playoffs? Did I say the word playoffs? Hold that one. I'll be at Motocross the Nations. I'll be at all of them. In fact, I wasn't even going to do the in-office version of the Weege Show again because I figured there's only one more of these and we'll just pretend it never happened and out of sight, out of mind. But the racing in Pittsburgh was so compelling, I had to do it. So we're running it back. Thanks to the folks at Racetech for backing the show. You know the gold valves from racetech.com. Plusher, better bottoming resistance, more traction, and also made in the USA. So tariff-proof? I don't know much about that topic. I do know Supercross racing to a degree. And I know that everyone's dream at Anaheim 1 is that the things are really close at the end of the year and you get that playoff type feel. Well, it doesn't happen very often. Maybe 10 out of 50 seasons have been this close. And that's why we got to harness it and grasp it and do a video from the office on a Monday morning. What's worse? Weed show from the office or Monday mornings? But this is too good to skip. Now, I said playoffs, and keep that in your noggin. The sport did engineer playoffs in with the SMX playoffs and World Championship at the end of the year. That's 3 compelling races. I think people thought it was exciting last year, going into the Vegas finale, the Lawrences versus Sexton. Whoever wins that one wins the $1 million. That was cool. But it'd be cool also if it happened organically in a 17-race championship, and it pretty much has this year. Now, I know the vision that a lot of folks have of when you think playoffs is, oh, I want that Game 7 or the final race of the year, round 17, should be whoever wins the race wins the title. But if you followed regular sports that have playoffs, the heartbreaking games are usually right in the middle. Games 3 or 4 or 5 that swing either direction, and that's ultimately what determines it. And that's kind of what these last couple races were. Sexton was in must-win scenarios over and over, unless Webb had a bad race, and that's super rare. Sexton had to keep winning, and that raised the stakes. And finally, Cooper Webb got one. And this race in Pittsburgh gets to push up against a whole bunch of narratives. I get to push back against the 2 narratives that I dislike the most. And maybe the only narratives I don't like in the world. We have the narrative of people look at their weather app on a Tuesday, see some clouds in the forecast, and say, uh-oh, we're in for a mutter. So this gauntlet of 4 straight Supercross races in open-air stadiums in the Northeast in the springtime, recipe for disaster? No! 1 mud race out of those 4. That's only 25%. And what's more, I think it's cool to get 1 crazy mud race a year on average, because then you get those wild scenarios. Aaron Plessinger diving face first into the mud, 2 privateers with Gage Linville and Cullen Park on the podium in Foxborough. That's awesome, and it's also a tradition. It's just baked into the heritage of the sport. I don't know why you'd want to fix something that's not broken. Can you imagine if this season ended with just a 7-race run at the New Orleans Mercedes-Benz Superdome just so everyone would know for sure it wasn't going to be muddy? What are we even avoiding there? These aren't even mud races in the end. It was great in Pittsburgh. So I get to once again push back against that mud race narrative. Don't fix what's not broken. Supercross in an open-air stadium is fine. Also, I get to push back against that if Rider X wins this amount of races down to the end and Rider B finishes second in all these races down to the end. Here's how the points will finish out. It doesn't happen. It's happened 1 time in Supercross history. Yes, 2003 played out exactly like that. Chad Reed won the final 6 races. Ricky Carmichael finished second every time. Carmichael had enough of a points buffer to still win the title. For what it's worth, Ernesto Fonseca finished 3rd in all 6 of those races. 2003, the year most ravaged by injuries of any Supercross season ever, for sure. But that's it. That's 1 season ever where it's turned out that way. And now 2025 won't turn out that way either, because Cooper Webb prevents the 5 in a row winning out by Chase Sexton. And by doing that, he gets to push back against a narrative himself. And that narrative is that he doesn't have the speed. We hear this all the time. He doesn't have the speed. I think it's a little more complex than that. And that's unfortunately what narratives are, right? Narratives are taking a very complex topic that would take pages and pages of reading or hours and hours of learning and crafting and trying to boil it down to something that's easily digestible, like I did on Friday when I tried to take the entire silly season scenario and even a little bit about rider salaries and bonuses and tried to boil it down to an 18-minute video that, if I was doing my job well, probably should have only taken 8 minutes. It's a bad habit of talking too much. That's what narratives are. They're an oversimplification to try to make it digestible and easy to understand complex topics. But the Cooper Webb not having the speed is too complex to just say he doesn't have the speed. He doesn't have the speed in the rudimentary, simplistic ways that people usually measure speed in this sport. And it's really hard to grasp because speed is oddly not measured in miles per hour at any point in this particular sport. It's not like an Indy car hitting 230 mph on the front straight or a pitcher that can throw 100 mph. Speed is different. I really think speed in this sport needs to be defined by, you either need to go fast enough to hold someone off or catch someone. Can you do it or not? And more often than not, Webb can actually do it. But the metrics we think about normally are lap time speed, as in best lap time, either in qualifying and or in the main, or some visual, a guy going insanely fast through whoops or jumping some crazy jump combination or railing a turn. And those are not the things that jump off the page with Cooper Webb. But is it not having speed? For example, in Seattle, when Sexton passes him, starts to pull away, gets a 2.6 second gap, and then Webb finds the speed to catch him and end up winning the race. That is speed somewhere in there. And I think the reason we don't see the speed in the typical manner is because Webb doesn't try to have speed when the track is fresh. His goal always is to be at his fastest when everyone is at their slowest. When everyone's going slower, he's going to slow down the least when the track is mega hammered. And it's not something we're used to because it's still a relatively new way to attack the sport. The 450s do a lot more damage to the track than what we've seen throughout the majority of Supercross history. And the races are longer than what we've seen in the majority of Supercross history. So being able to handle a hammered track is a bigger asset, a bigger part of the strategy than it ever used to be in Supercross. We're programmed to think that Jeremy McGrath, whole shot, 8 fast laps and cruise. We just don't see racing play out like that anymore. Who can figure out the track when it's at its worst and go fast then? It's just as much part of the game now. And Webb has excelled there, but it still is hard to see. It's still hard to understand. Does he actually have speed? Look, man, he's had to slay giants like Ken Roczen and Eli Tomac, who have mega speed, mondo speed. And he's won 30 races now in his career while racing against fast dudes like that. And Jet Lawrence is fast, and Chase Sexton is fast, and he still finds ways to win races. On that 18-minute long show on Friday where I talked a little bit about money in the sport, and I said at least factory riders are making $100,000 in race win bonuses. That's $3 million at least that Webb has made in his career by winning Supercross mains. You got to have speed to do it. Now, he didn't have it in New Jersey, straight up. Got his doors blown off by Sexton, but that was rare to me, to see a race where it's like Webb's 20 seconds off on speed. He got blown away by the Tomac Jet battle in San Diego, but that was the beginning of the year, man. You just see that stuff all the time where a guy will be way off, and the next week he's way better. He won one of the mains at Glendale in Triple Crown format, showing he had speed on a track that everyone didn't think he had speed. Look, I've seen speed. I'm down on the floor for free practice a lot of weeks. When the whoops are fresh, Ken Roczen's speed in the whoops is absolutely ridiculous. Early in the laps, or early laps of the race, Ken Roczen's speed is absolutely ridiculous. When Eli Tomac's lighting up a corner, speed is ridiculous. We've all seen speed. Cooper Webb just has a different speed, and he gets to push up against that narrative now. And it's okay if you're a Chase Sexton fan. I mean, this is what it's supposed to be all about. 2 athletes at the top of their game, healthy, ready, motivated, they want it. Only one man can win. It's not like Sexton was bad by any means.
A dogfight. I put a lot of pressure on Coop, and normally I think everybody I've raced has made mistakes under that pressure, and he didn't. And that goes to show how good mentally he is and how good of a rider and racer he is. Congrats to him, and like I said, every race I want to win. I think between him and I, we might hate losing more than anybody else. So it's tough, but like I said, we get another chance next weekend, and I think like I said, anything can happen, but I definitely need help, and my goal is just to go out there and win.
It was fun to see how the track differences 2 weeks in a row really told the story. The double whoops, the gnarly whoops in New Jersey, Webb had nothing for Sexton there, but the whoops actually were the asset for Webb at Pittsburgh. Sexton was going faster in the whoops early because he was blitzing, but as he explained, they were far apart and it was taking a lot of energy to keep that bike on top of those whoops. And as they got more hammered, as the track got slower, as the track got more beat up, as the track got worse, it was harder and harder to do that. So then he wanted to see if he could jump about as fast as he could blitz, and it would take less energy and less risk. But in the end, it was actually riskier because he ended up going off the track, and that gave Webb a little buffer, and Webb was fast enough where Sexton couldn't quite get back to him. That's what these things should be, right? These subtleties, just a little difference in the whoops. The whoops literally were the liability and the asset for Webb in 2 consecutive weeks, 7 days apart. I think it's awesome to have this. So why not talk about it on a Monday? Why not push back against some of these narratives on a Monday? Why not do the show from the office on a Monday? And why not stop doing that now? Because I'll be in Denver. I hope it doesn't rain or snow. It's an open air stadium. What's going to happen?